Let's talk about abundance. Abundance is a topic in which I have had a great deal of interest through the years. And so have many people. And the first thing I came to understand about abundance was that when I began to look at it deeply, and when I began to receive my information from a higher authority, is that I have been misdefining what abundance really is. That I thought that abundance was stuff. You know? It had to do with how much stuff I had. And I hate to be simplistic here, and I really hate to be really obvious here with what I'm going to tell you, because I know you already know this. But for those of you who have forgotten that you know, I'd like to remind you of what I was reminded of in my dialogue. That true abundance has nothing to do with anything that I am having, and everything to do with what I am being. Let me tell you how I wound up in this chair, just to give you a little bit of background on how all of this began. In 1992, I had reached the end of the line for me. In 1992, I had reached a point where I was losing again another committed relationship with a significant other. My career had reached a dead end. My health was falling apart. I mean, nothing was working in my life. And this relationship that I had with my significant other was the one that I knew would last forever. And there it was in front of my face, just disintegrating right in my hands. It wasn't the first time that such a relationship had disintegrated right in front of me. Nor was it the second. Nor was it the third, nor the fourth. And so I knew that there was something I don't know here, the knowing of which would change all of this for me. I couldn't seem to find the formula. I was either doing something that I did love, but I was dead broke, or I was making enough money to skim by and, making it through, but my soul was dying 1,000 deaths. I didn't seem to know how to put the two together, not for very long. And if I did get them together, it was always for like about 6 or 8 months. It would all fall apart. All of this was happening at the same time. Now see, usually God had been better than that. It was usually one thing or the other before in my life. But at this particular period, for reasons that still aren't clear to me, it was all at once at the same time. Oh, God said, let's give him a triple whammy. Let's do the old career relationship body number in the same week. And one night I threw back the covers of the bed because I had awakened in the middle of the night, filled with rage and upset over how my life was. I stormed out into the larger part of the house looking for answers in the middle of the night. I went to where I always went for answers in the middle of the night, but there was nothing decent in the refrigerator that night, so I went to the couch instead. And there I sat on the couch, 4 o'clock in the morning on the couch, stewing in my own juice, as it were. And then I called out to God. I thought, well, I can run around and break up the house, tear apart the dishes or whatever. But I sat there and I called out, God, what does it take? What does it take to make this game work? Somebody tell me the rules. I promise I'll play, just give me the rules, And after you give them to me, don't change them. And I asked a ton of other questions as well. And then I saw on the coffee table in front of me, there happened to be a yellow legal pad lying there. There was a pen next to it, so I picked it up, flicked on a lamp, and I began to write my anger out. You know? Seemed to be a safe, quiet way to deal with it at 4:15 in the morning. I don't know how it is with you when you are angry and when you're writing, but I write, really big when I get angry, and there I was. What does it take? I was really angry. To make life work. And what have I done to deserve a life of such continuing struggle? Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. And on I went like that for about 20 minutes, just writing out my anger, defying the universe to give me a response. And then I finally calmed myself down just a bit, felt just a little bit better. And I thought, okay, that worked. I have to share this process with some friends. That works. Took the pen to put it down, and the pen would not leave my hand. I looked at that and I thought, isn't that interesting? My hand is cramped up from all that writing. So you always find a reason. I brought the pen back to the paper for reasons that aren't clear to me now, and a thought came to me, a little voice, right over here, just over my right shoulder. And I call it now my voiceless voice. And the voiceless voice said, Neale, do you really want answers to all of these questions, or are you just venting? I said, well, I am venting, but if you have answers, I'd sure as heck like to know what they are. And with that, the answers came. In a flood. The answer to every question I ever asked came to me. And so fast that I felt I had to write them down or I would forget them. I never intended to write a book. I was simply writing this stuff down because I didn't want to forget this stuff that was coming to me. So I wrote it down in a flood as fast as my hand could fly. And as I read what I was writing, it brought up naturally other questions for me because it was astonishing stuff that was coming off the pen. So I started writing the questions that the answers brought up for me, and that brought more answers, and I wrote more questions, and that brought more answers, and before I knew it, I was involved in a on-paper dialogue with what I later came to know must be God. And that's the short story of how I happened to be here. And I wound up sending that on-paper dialogue to a publisher. And it was published, and 2 million people have purchased it. It's been translated into 24 languages around the world. It's really astonishing to see something you've written come out in Japanese or Greek. It's all Greek to me. And to realize that somehow or another, in fact, you've touched the entire world. So that's how I got to be sitting here in the front of the room. I'm very clear now that I was called on to be a messenger. I'm very clear now that in fact that's what I've always been, is a messenger. And that there's no place I can allow myself to be except in the front of the room. Because I have a very important message to share with everyone whose life I touch. And here is the important message I've come to share. All of you are a messenger. And there's no place else that you can allow yourself to be except in the front of the room. And all of you have come to share a very important message with everyone whose life you touch. And here's the important message that you have come to share. All of them, each of them is a messenger. And here's the message all of us have come to share with each other. Hello, wake up. Do you know who you really are? Hello, wake up. Do you understand? Here's the message we've come to share. You and I are one. There's only one of us in the room. If you think that we're separate, cut it out. We're not separate. There's only one of us in the room. And there's no difference between us. And if you think there's a difference between us, cut it out. Because there is no difference between us. And stop trying to create an artificial difference where there is none. And when you get that you and I are one, and there's only one of us in the room, and only one of us on the planet, and only one of us in all of creation, everything that causes you pain and misery, travail and struggle, heartache and difficulty will disappear. It will simply go away. So stop thinking that you're over there and I'm over here. And get that there's no place where you end and I begin. Such a simple, elegant message that changes everything. When will we get it? When will we get it? We'll get it when we send it. If we're not careful, we're liable to forget who we really are. And we're liable to play a game called I know and you don't. Except that I'm not willing to play that game now or ever. I'm very clear that there's nothing I have to say that you don't already know. So thanks for coming and good night. Somebody had their hand up.
When you described you heard the voice, and subsequently when writing, asking questions, writing the books out, getting a response, was there a particular feeling associated with that particular voice or that particular impulse to write that authenticated it over, say, other times we hear a voice or other times we're urged to write? Was there something
different?
Was there something else, a presence or a feeling,
yes,
or
yes,
anything that you can describe?
Yes, there was. It was a softness. First of all, it felt as if my whole body had just gone into jello. Almost don't know how to describe that. It was just a releasing of every bit of anxiety or tension, or I want to say negativity within me. As I sat on that couch, I can recall just almost as if without any active volition on my part, I didn't say, I'm going to release my tension here. It just happened. I just suddenly, and then from that softness sprang it's very difficult to discuss this. It's a peace and a sense of incomprehensible joy and oneness, a joy that almost brings tears, that kind of a deep, deep joy. And from that first moment, I just sat there and the tears began to flow before I wrote more than 10 words. I can recall the experience of the ink blotting on the page. I was using one of those, felt tip pens. And the ink was running as my tears were flowing. And it rarely is less than that. I've kind of gotten used to the experience now. So I'm aware of what's going to happen. But I know what it feels like. Have any of you ever been present at the moment that a baby is being born and held it in your hands for those first 3 or 5 minutes of its life? Any of you ever had that experience? That's what it felt like. It felt that way like when I held my child for the first few moments of its life and looked in its face, and there was no other feeling I could have except oneness, complete connectedness, love that knew no limitation of any kind and no condition at all. Just a sense of, oh, you can't even put it into words. That's how it felt, like holding your newborn child in your hands. That's how it felt. And I knew in that moment that I was, in fact, holding a newborn child in my hands. I knew that I had given birth to a new me. I didn't invoke the voiceless voice at all. I think what happened was I simply called out to the universe, really called out to God, as many people do in their moments of quiet and deepest desperation. You know, my God, what do you want from me? And really, my question was larger than that. If I'm to stay alive, how am I going to do that? Because I didn't really want to even stay here. You know, I wanted to just check out. So I kind of challenged God in that moment. Either give me a reason for living or I'm gone. And I just don't get this. Don't get what's happening here. When I first heard the voiceless voice, it was very much as if someone was whispering in my right ear. And the feeling that came over me was one of extreme calm. I want to say, becalmed, very much at peace, and filled with kind of an indescribable joy. You know, I think of moments in my life when I've had that joy. The moment that I married Nancy, not even the whole ceremony, but that particular moment when the minister finally said, you know, do you? And in that moment I looked in her eyes and I just paused for a moment and said, I do. And it was just that tiny sliver of a moment when your whole body is filled with something you can't describe. That's how it felt in that moment when I first heard that voiceless voice. Just joy, a peaceful, calming joy. From the beginning of time, all we have ever wanted was to love and be loved. And from the beginning of time, all we've ever done is create moral constructions, religious taboos, societal ethics, familial traditions, philosophical constructions, all manner of rules and regulations telling us who, when, where, what, and how we may love, and who, when, where, what, and how we may not. And unfortunately, the second list is longer than the first. What are we doing? What are we doing? If I walk up to the sky and I see the beauty of me, sees the beauty of you, what is wrong with that? Or if I walk up to a stranger and say, I see who you are, how is that not okay? I don't understand how we've decided to construct it here, people, but I got to tell you this, if we don't change the construction, we will never have the truest experience of who we really are. I recall sitting in a room full of people a little bit larger than this not too many weeks ago when I was facilitating a retreat in the beautiful mountains of Colorado in Estes Park. And in that room, a person said to me, I wish I could experience abundance. And that was his issue. And he said, you know, I don't make a great deal of money. I have barely enough to get by. I had to, you know, really squeeze the pennies to get here, and so forth. And he said, I've all my life wanted to experience the kind of abundance that I see you, and he pointed to me in the front of the room, you know, experiencing. And I said, well, you know, if you really want to have the experience of abundance, why don't you spend our lunch hour giving abundantly of that which you have to give? And he looked at me, astonishingly enough, and he said, I have nothing to give. He really thought, I mean, he wasn't even making that up, he really thought he had nothing to give. And so I had to look at him and begin to say the obvious. Do you have any love to give? Oh, he said, and he wasn't even sure about that, but he, I think, had to concede the point that perhaps there was a morsel of love within him that he could give. He said, yeah, I suppose I have some love to give. I said, do you have any compassion? Does compassion reside within you at any level? Yeah, well, I suppose I have a little bit of compassion. People have called me a compassionate guy. He was having a hard time saying the word compassion in the same sentence as the word me. You know. But he allowed us to how perhaps he had some of that to give as well. Said, do you have any humor? He said, oh yeah, everybody thinks I have a great sense of humor. I got enough jokes to last for a lifetime. I said, terrific. And we made a list of the things that he had in abundance. But of course, he didn't think that had anything to do with abundance as he was describing it. I said, okay, let's agree that we disagree on our definitions of what is abundance, but let's agree that you do have an abundance of these things. We could agree on that. I said, great. Now, well, here's what I want you to do. Spend your lunch hour, and I want you to give of these things that you have acknowledged that you do have in abundance. Give of them in profusion. Give more than you ever gave before to everyone whose life you touch while we're on our lunch hour. That's my challenge to you. And he agreed to accept the challenge. And so he went off on the lunch hour, and he began to outpour that of which he had abundantly. On everyone, there were like maybe 600 people at this place. 200 of them were in our retreat and 400 from other places. So there were lots of strangers who didn't know who this guy was or what he was up to. See, so he walked into the cafeteria and it was like a major confront for him because it was like, well, my group knows that I'm going to act crazy now. But the rest of these people don't know that I'm now going to act kind of nuts. Because you see, when you give of yourself abundantly, half the world calls that crazy. See, they say you must have something going on with you, something's wrong. People don't act that way, which of course is the problem. People don't act that way. So here he is walking up to people in the cafeteria, and he is sharing abundantly of that which is abundantly his. He's sharing of his love and his good cheer and his humor. He was telling jokes all over the cafeteria. Some folks were laughing, ha, 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 that's pretty funny. And other folks were laughing, ha, ha, ha. Who is this guy? But everyone couldn't help but have a little grin, even those who didn't think his joke was that funny. Couldn't help but grin a bit at this wonderful guy, this Santa, who just showed up in the cafeteria all of a sudden. And he was going around saying wonderful things to people and one person, as it happened, was not in that good of a mood. And it was his opportunity to show some compassion. And he showed compassion by not telling any more of his bad jokes. But then he sat down next to that person, said, I don't know you, but I'm from this other group that's doing a retreat in the other lodge. Everything okay? Before he knew it, he had become involved in a conversation with God. And he got to express that part of himself. This guy came back from the lunch hour feeling so huge, see, feeling so big. And he said, I can't tell you. I said, how I feel. I said, do you feel abundant now? He said, yes, I do. I feel abundantly wealthy with all these grand parts of me that I haven't really given myself permission to express. That is to say, express, push out. To express, to push out. Hadn't given myself permission to do that. But what was really funny, and here's the trick that the group played on him, while he was at lunch, somebody went to the room and got their hat, and everybody in the room put money in the hat. So that when he got back to the room, the guy had like a lot of money in the hat, because the room just wanted to prove to him, you know, what goes around comes around and all that. It was this incredible in-the-moment experience of the truth. And he just sat there. This grown guy. The tears started to flow. And he had a direct experience of what is eternally so. That which you give to another, you give to yourself. And you can give it in one form, and it will come back in another. But it cannot fail to come back to you because there's only one of us in the room. And his life changed out of his new awareness of what abundance truly is. So the first thing I want to share with you about abundance is get clear what abundance is. And if and when you decide to give abundantly of the grandest part of who you are, with everyone whose life you touch, if you decide to do that, your life will change in 90 days. Maybe 90 minutes, be careful. Because people will suddenly get who you are. See, let me explain to you the difference. Here are two lawyers, and they both have an office on the same block in the same city. They both graduated from the same college, and they both graduated at the top of their class. So they have equal skill levels. It's not about location, because they're both on the same block in the same city. See? Yet one lawyer, lawyer A, is doing fabulously well, and lawyer B, just a few feet down the block, is not doing so well. What's that about? What's happening there? What causes one person to be the thing we call successful and another person not, given everything else being equal? What's happening there? Lawyer A is very clear. Plumber A is very clear. Doctor A is very clear. It's not about what he's doing. See, it has nothing to do with what he's doing. So be careful that you don't get caught up in a thought that your abundance, or what you might want to call your success in life, will come to you out of what you're doing. It will not. And if you haven't learned that, life will teach you that, because you'll do all this stuff. So you'll be doing this and doing that and doing this and doing that and doing this and doing that, and just wind up with a great big pile of doo-doo. And you'll wonder, how did I create this pile of doo-doo here? I was, I did all the right things. And then it will dawn on you, oh, I get it. It has nothing to do with what I'm doing. But that isn't the connection. That isn't how all this good stuff that I think is going to flow to me is going to flow to me. And then we see another person down the street who appears to be doing nothing. And abundance is just flowing down upon him. Just you can't push it away fast enough. Say, well, that's not fair. How does he get to have all that? He's not doing anything, which is, of course, precisely the secret. He's not doing a damn thing. I mean to say, and I chose my words very carefully there, he's not doing a damned thing. And we've been spending our lives running around doing all these damned things. But he's being something. When he walks into the room, he is being something extraordinary. He is being love, compassion, wisdom, humor, joy. And he's being one. See, the highest level of beingness. He's being one. When you go to a doctor, lawyer, plumber, dentist, whoever it is, anybody to whom you're going, the clerk at the post office, doesn't matter. When you're going to that person, you look into their eyes and you go, whoa, they get me. They see me. They're in a sense, although you might not articulate it this way, they're like one with me. This is we walk away and say, what a nice person. What a nice guy. Wasn't she sweet? That's our way of articulating, boy, I felt an immediate connection. This person doesn't feel separate from me. There are no barriers, there are no walls. So you get to decide whether you choose to be person or whether you choose to be a person. If you choose to be a person, person A, and give abundantly of all the magic that lies within you, the magic that lies outside of you will be attracted to you and become as much a part of you as you allow it to become. Got it? So the important thing for us to remember when we're searching for right livelihood is to stop looking for something to do and start looking for something to be. And to get in touch with that part that resides deep inside of you that knows who you really are, and see what it would take to call that forth in a beingness way. So look inside. What is it that I'm being when I feel totally fulfilled? and totally self-expressed. What am I being when that happens? Maybe I'm being a healer. Maybe I'm being sensual. Maybe I'm being creative. Or there's some level or state of beingness that would describe to you in a word or two the essence of what's showing up for you, what part of you that's really showing up big. But before I get into it, as I said a minute ago, before I get into a detailed explanation of that, I want to go to some other thoughts, first of all, that I have noticed block people from experiencing abundance, and that blocked me from experiencing abundance. And now I am going to talk about abundance in terms of dollars and cents. Many people hold the thought that money, per se, is bad. I don't know whether you hold that. And some people hold that thought almost unconsciously. That is to say, if you ask them directly, do you experience that money is bad? Is it your thought that money is bad? They would say, no, it's not. Money is good. Many people would say that. But they act as if it's bad. Do you ever have anybody do you a favor, and when you want to offer them a few pennies just to kind of compensate for some of the hard costs that you know they've put into it, they won't take the money? What do you suppose that's about? They don't want to take your thanks? No, they're happy to take your thanks. They don't want to take your money? No, they don't want to take your money for it, because somehow the exchange of money for the good thing they did for you at some level besmirches the exchange. You see, it drops it to a level that starts to feel icky. You see, there's a guy I once knew named Reverend Ike who used to say, I love money and money loves me. That's a great message. I love money and money loves me. And I don't declare that in my universe God is everything except money. But rather I declare God is everything including money. See? That money is just another form of the energy of life that we call God. So we need to get off of our idea that somehow money is bad. You know, we talk about filthy lucre, you know, and we talk about being filthy rich. And we use those phrases that give away what our inner thought is, or at least the inner thought of society at large is, about this. And I can tell you that society still holds this thought very deeply, because one of the questions I am most frequently asked, how does it feel for you to be going around the country talking about spirituality and making so much money at it? As if somehow I'm doing something wrong, you see? As if somehow that should be a warning to the public. See? Big warning. See, look at how much money he's making off of this. And every so often I get a letter from someone who says, if you're really so spiritual, why don't you give away all of your royalties to the poor? See? Why don't you, for that matter, just put the book on the internet and let people have access to it for free? See? And the reason that we don't do that is that if we did that, the publishers would go out of business and the book could never be produced to begin with. See, somebody has to do the first thing called publish the book in some form. Even putting something up on the internet costs money. So because that's true, what we notice is that money is just the lubrication that makes the machinery of life work at this present time on our planet as society is currently constructed. And that's all right. See? So I refuse to go to that place that says if you were really a spiritual person, you'd give your book away, you'd take the royalties that you do get for it and spread it out among the poor, and you wouldn't take any of that for yourself. As it happens, just as a matter of information, Nancy and I and the foundation we've created do contribute a large sum of money each year to many, many worthwhile causes. That's not important, it's just what's true, it's just what's so. But, you know, I love making a lot of money because it allows me to do a lot of things, and I'm very clear what I want to do in the world. I'm very clear the changes that I want to cause to happen. And as I said, in our society, it takes that lubrication to make that occur. So what we have to do is get comfortable, is to get comfortable with money, as we have to also get comfortable, I might add, with our bodies and with each other. We have to learn to get comfortable with the stuff of life so that we can say, bring all that life is to me, and all that I am a part of life, I bring to you, and not be ashamed of any part of it, because God doesn't know from shame. Everything changes when you make a decision to be one of the courageous ones. Someone who chooses to make a life rather than a living. And that's when your whole experience shifts. You create a shift beyond belief when you change your thought about what you're up to here. When you decide, in fact, to make a life rather than a living. And that shift is so enormous that everything is altered in your experience, including your experience of money. And make no mistake about it, this is possible. I'm here to tell you that shift happens. Now we have a question over here.
So, a conflict I have with money, I also appreciate it, enjoy it, and I used to feel like I would have to do things I didn't want to do to get money, which now I see that's not a problem, but a conflict that's still left for me is that I feel like if I'm having a lot of money, if I have a lot of money, I'm participating in a program or system that leaves the majority of the world on the outs. And it would be much more acceptable for me if I knew that everyone in the world had food, everyone in the world had medical care, everyone in the world had housing and clothing, and then money was simply a means to play with more, say, quote-unquote, unnecessary.
I hear every word you're saying, but be careful that you don't use your righteousness about that to deprive yourself of the very empowering instrument that could cause it to happen through you. See, be very careful that you don't use righteousness to disempower yourself from being one of those who can actually cause that to happen. My life is dedicated to creating a world exactly as the one you've just described. But I can tell you that I'm far more effective in doing that now than I was when I was denying the very power that would cause me to be able to create those kinds of changes. Every moment of righteousness and every moment of judgment stops you from expressing the grandest idea, because no one can hear you anyway. When you speak from righteousness or judgment, no one can hear you. Not only then do you push away the power that would cause you to be able to create it, you push away the people that could even bestow on you that power, because no one gets righteousness, not even those you are trying to help. You know, one of the biggest traps of the human experience is righteousness. And sometimes we feel we have what I want to call a right to be righteous. I mean, we really feel that we have a real firm grasp on right and wrong in this particular situation, whatever that might be. And we might. I mean, given the relative realities of what is right and wrong anyway in any given circumstance, but within the framework of that relative system of thought, we might in fact be dead right about something. It's a very dangerous place to be, though, because righteousness can block effective action more quickly than just about any other kind of attitude or experience. It stops us from being understanding, you see. When I think I'm right about something, I can't begin to understand how you could hold a point of view different from me, or how a condition can be allowed to be to continue. I lose my compassion for the people that created that being what it is that out there that I'm being righteous about. When I lose my compassion, I lose my ability to make any kind of really effective change for the better. Because no one likes to be made wrong. It's especially dangerous, I think, for us to become righteous about all the wrong that's being done in the world. Because being terribly righteous about what's being done wrong in the world is a huge announcement that we don't understand that we've placed it there. You also said something else interesting. You said in the earlier days and times when you contemplated these issues, you would catch yourself doing something you didn't want to do, or thought you had to do things you didn't want to do in order to.
Quote, sell out.
No one does anything they don't want to do. Let's get very clear on this. No one does anything they don't want to do, ever. We just do what we want to do, given the results that we anticipate it will produce. Then we pretend there was no other way and convince ourselves to feel bad about the choices we've made. See, no one does anything they don't want to do. No one. There is never a time in life when you do not have a choice, ever. As a matter of fact, you have created the circumstances of your life, including this place that you call no choice, precisely to give you an experience of the choices that you have. You've actually created this apparent roadblock to cause you to notice that there was no roadblock to begin with. And some of you will notice that, and most people will not. And they will allow themselves to live the rest of their lives imagining that they had no choice. I had no choice is the most frequently used rationale for us doing what we wanted to do in the human experience.